Well, hello and welcome back to Tabletop Talks. This is Tabletop Talk number 2, and this is a scenario called Sunrise Sunset. Now, the whole idea of today is that we're going to play through this scenario, and we are going to illustrate every rule in painful detail for people who are new or relatively new to ASL, possibly coming to ASL from starter kit. Tabletop Talk 1 focused really on infantry movement and firing. This one introduces guns, so if you like, it sticks to the pattern established by the starter kits. So in this one we have the Germans have an infantry gun, and the Russians have a mortar. And we'll talk more about those, of course, as when we talk about the counters later on. Very important to note that this scenario is not designed or guaranteed or even necessarily expected to be particularly balanced. The whole point is that it's a situation where you can put the counters out, you can try things out. It doesn't matter if you win or lose, it doesn't matter if you do well or not. You're trying out different tactics, trying out different methods, trying out different rules, and just practicing them. That's the whole point of these talks. Having said that, I've played this solo a couple of times now, and it's swung badly pro-German in one and badly pro-Russian in the other. So I think it's one of these games which perhaps is we describe as dicey. The whole idea of a couple of good dice rolls in the right place, and this can be over pretty quickly. Anyway, let me just show you exactly what we've got going on here. So here on the right hand side. Excuse me, is the Russian order of battle. We're going to talk much more about those in a moment. Over on the left hand side we've got the German order of battle. Now, you can get hold of the scenario card for this if you become a patron of Illuminating Rounds, and very easy to do that. You just need to go to just simply go to the ASL Scenario Archive, and you'll be able to find it, and you'll be able to follow it. If you become a patron, you can download all 4 of these scenarios for free. You probably get away with working it out from just watching this, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you want to support the project a little bit, then being a patron would be really, really helpful. So the Germans set up first, and the Germans set up on or west of hex row Y. Now, I haven't put out the north counter, but it's straight up. So this line here, I put my leader there to make sure that you can see on the video, that's they've got to go on that hex or to the left of it. Okay. The Russians set up second, and they set up on or east of BB. So this is the set anywhere to the east of there, BB, and to the east is the setup area for the Russians. The Russians move first. There are only 3 turns in this scenario, which is very low number for an ASL scenario. The Russians have to destroy in any or capture in any way this infantry gun. And there's a special rule that gun has to set up on a level 2 hill, which means it has to set up in one of those 3 hexes. They have to capture or destroy, or that gun destroyed in any way. In other words, even if the Germans destroy it themselves accidentally, which of course there are rules which make that possible. But they also have to capture, or they have to control building U6. So capturing building U6 matters. Now the Germans potentially, I suppose, could recap, because they go last on turn 3. So if the Russians control the building U6 at the end of their turn, the Germans potentially could recapture it. Although, frankly, there are a lot more Russians here than Germans. So I think once the Russians have captured it, probably you'd be sort of expecting a Russian victory. Anyway, I'm going to move on to talk about the order of battle and setting up the Russians next. So we're going to set up the Germans. We're going to have a look at their order of battle, and we're going to do a little bit of an analysis of the situation that they're in, and then we're going to set them up. The first thing that I forgot to mention when I was talking about the scenario is that by special scenario rule, or by SSR, all the Russian conscripts, and there are 8 of them here, and the 6+1 leader, have to set up and then perform on turn 1 in the movement phase a human wave attack, which basically means they all just charge forward, and they're going to get shot up pretty badly, but that's the nature of a human wave attack. Now, so the Germans need to have that in mind, that they need to be able to like respond to that when they're setting up. So we have, for the Germans, we have a number of assets. The first is we have 4 first-line squads. So this is your standard German unit. We obviously had, these were featured in the last video, and they're in this one as well. They got good range, 6 hexes, and a scenario on this size is quite a long way. And remember, they can extend their firepower to twice that, although it's halved. But 6 hexes is as far as anybody's going to want to be doing. Any of these German units are going to want to be firing, I suspect, in this scenario. So they're good quality troops. They've also got this spraying fire capability, which is indicated by the underlined range number. So you see the little underlining there. That means that they can fire into 2 adjacent hexes at the same time. And the reason that this is sometimes useful is for laying down residual across a wide axis of advance and making it really kind of like difficult for enemy units to approach you. You could potentially find a way of putting residual into 2 hexes. So that can be very useful. Machine guns can do that too. We have, on the subject of machine guns, we have 2 of them. There's the light machine gun, which has a rate of fire of 1. So if we have a 1 on the coloured dice roll, it can fire again. And then we have the medium machine gun, which has an even better rate of fire. We potentially get more than 1 shot off it. On a 2 or a 1 on the coloured dice roll, whenever it fires, it can fire again. Of course, the medium machine gun is much more powerful than the light machine gun. And then we've got the mortar, which actually has a really good rate of fire number, a 3. So on a 1, a 2 or a 3 on the coloured dice roll, every time it fires, it can fire again. So those are 3 support weapons that are going to be really, really crucial and important. There's only 1 leader, but he's a very good leader, 8 minus 1. And we've also got this infantry gun. The infantry gun, imagine it's just a very, very big gun. And this gun, we'll talk later about the mechanics of firing that and hitting it and causing damage. But a couple of things to say about it. The first is that it has to come with a crew. I mean, in unusual circumstances, you can sometimes man them with half squads, or even two leaders. But the idea is normally when you get a gun in your order of battle, you get a crew as well, and they go with it, and they can fire it without any kind of like cost. Whereas if any other units are kind of they're not kind of qualified, they're not properly trained to fire it. The other thing is that wherever you set it up, it's assumed to be emplaced. If you set it up there at the beginning of the scenario, in other words, I guess the crew have had time to sort of dig some defensive position of some sort. So there's +2 to any shots against this unit when it's being fired at, virtually whatever way people might fire at it. Also, and I think this is quite interesting, it sets up hidden if in concealment terrain. So this position, so if you set it up, for example, in this forest, it would be completely off the board, and the German player would secretly record its position until they brought it into play. However, in this scenario, we are going to we're not going to be able to do that, because we're told in the set of instructions that the gun has to set up on a level 2 hill. However, So we'll come to that in a moment. So then we got the foxholes and the trenches. Now they're interesting because they're very, very similar. A foxhole gives you +2 to any fire if you are inside it. Essentially, if I get a squad to illustrate, this squad is not in the foxhole, it's in the open ground. Okay, it costs 1 movement point to get into the foxhole if you're already in the hex. He's now inside the foxhole. Instead of being an open ground, potentially having no protection, no TEM protection against being fired at, he's now got a +2. Now that +2 is signified by the other +2. You've got the overrun. Overrun is obviously done by vehicles, and no vehicles in this scenario, so this won't apply. They get +4 against being overrun. So foxholes are very good if you think you're going to get overrun by a vehicle. Also very good against off-board artillery. There's no off-board artillery in this scenario, so for any shot that a unit in that foxhole takes, it's going to be +2. So we've got the foxhole, which might be useful. We've also got a trench, which is similar to the foxhole. You can see that the protective features or qualities of the trench are identical. The difference is that in a foxhole, to get in and out, you have to enter or come from the open ground. So this unit is in open ground. It spends one movement to move into the trench, into the foxhole. If he wants to come out of the foxhole, he has to spend 1 point and be in the open ground above the foxhole, potentially being fired at by things without any protection. The trench gives you quite a few alternatives. So if we don't in this scenario, but if we had more than one trench counter, you would be able to move from one trench counter to the next without leaving the trench. So your movement would be much, much more protected. The other feature is that if you have a trench on on a hill, and there is a crest line to a lower level, then you can slip, if you like, out of the trench without having to actually go up onto the open ground. So whereas with a foxhole, this guy could still. I suppose the best way to explain this is the guy in this trench has two ways of moving to V5. He could, if he wanted to, move one out of the trench and then two into V5, but it would cost him two movement factors and he'd potentially be fired at in the open ground above the trench. Or, special rule when they're on the hills and they've got these crest lines, he can go to a lower level, just paying one, and will not be exposed to fire. So trenches are much, much better positions to be able to get out of once it looks like the position's going to be overrun. Foxholes, they're very good for last stand positions. Okay, so whatever you put in a foxhole, there's a very good chance that they will die there, but because of the protection of the foxhole, they might survive a little while and do more damage to the enemy. So let's think about how the Germans are going to set up this position. The trench is important because the Russians need to capture the gun, which I'm going to just put in the middle of the position so it can be defended by infantry on either side. The trench is important because the unit that I'm going to put in that trench, I want to be able to sneak back to the U6 building in the last turn or two of the game, so that the Russians can't just walk in and capture an empty building. The unit that is in that position, I'm going to give the medium machine gun to, and I'm going to put the leader up there, and he's going to be able to fire down into this area very, very easily and very, very effectively, perhaps catching some of these conscripts with -2 shots, -3 shots with the leader. And although this building appears to be in his way, actually you can see over it. He can't see into Z6 because this building will cast a shadow. He can fire into AA7. And in fact he can fire into, so 1, 2, 3, 4. He probably can't see a unit in Y9 because of this building here. But he can definitely see into Z9. Because this building in this situation would only cast one blind hex, one kind of shadow. The rules for working out whether you can see hexes from different levels are for another session, but for this scenario I think it's enough to say in this situation that you get one blind hex behind these buildings and things like that to the guys up on this hill. Similar to the guy up here, because he's on level 2, he can see over this wood in BB3. But he can't see AA4 because you've got one blind hex, but he can see into Z4. So remember, the Germans can deploy a unit. So I'm going to deploy this squad into 2 half squads. And what that does is it just gives us... Oops, that was wrong, wasn't it? It just gives us a little bit more flexibility. We now have like 5 units, 6 units that we can deploy instead of 5. And what I want to do is I want to give him the mortar. And I'm going to put him in this foxhole here. As you can see, the mortars are very, very heavy. I don't want to give up an entire squad to firing it, but this half squad will be able to fire that mortar. He won't be able to use his normal fire power, and he basically can't use his firepower and fire the mortar. He can use one or the other. The other half squad, A part of me is inclined to sort of put him back in the U6 building to be ready for the sort of the final defence of that building. And I might do. I'm going to put him there for now. The light machine gun. Okay, I've got a very clear plan what I want to do with the light machine gun. I'm going to put it in this building here, Z6, and my logic is that he can lay a fire lane down this hex spine, or indeed down this one. Okay, that's my plan. They can lay a fire lane. Now, if the Russians set up to charge through the middle, they're all going to have to go across. This shot is going kind of across the axis of the Russian advance, and so they're all going to have to run through that fire lane potentially, unless the Russians decide to set up somewhere else and attack somewhere differently, which they might do. That's going to be interesting. There's a good chance, I suppose, that it's quite a forward position. He's quite an important unit, really, a full squad with a light machine gun. So there is the danger that you'll lose him early on, but we're going to do it anyway. So this squad here, he's going to protect the other flank. So he's protecting this building in Y8. It's very likely Russians are going to come in this direction. Again, he's got a way out, potentially. He's got some cover behind him, so you could imagine him in his turn 1, surrounded by angry Russians, finding a way to kind of like evade breaking and to sort of like move back. In the meantime, his position is just basically to cause as much difficulty as he can to the early Russian advance. Now, I've had a think. I've decided we're going to put this one front as well. So the Germans are doing a kind of an in-your-face defence. Most of their units are forward, and we're going to find out what happens as a result of that. Remember, it's not necessarily a balanced scenario, but try different things. Would it make more sense to have these guys further back defending the building? Try it both ways. You know, just try it out and see what happens. So that's our setup for the Germans, and we're going to have a look at the Russians. Okay, so we got some interesting decisions to make with the Russians. If I just run through the order of battle first. The first thing they've got is a fair number, 6 first-line squads. Remember, these are the very standard Russian infantry units that we saw in the last game. 4 firepower, which is very standard for ASL, 4 hex range, and 7 morale. Nothing exciting about them, but solid, reasonable quality Russian troops. And then we have a lot, 8 really poor quality troops. Morale of 6. They're conscripts. Conscripts can only have 3 movement factors per turn. They have terrible range, so they got to get close to the enemy to do any damage, but they don't have the morale to get close to the enemy. Conscripts are terrible. Most likely, even a normal morale check, is that they're more likely to fail it than to pass it. And even if they pass it, because you pin on, if you equal your morale, actually the most likely result of a pass is that they pin. So not a brilliant result anyway. We've got a low quality 6+1 leader, and more about him when we talk about the human wave in a minute. We've got a good quality 8-1 leader, and we have a less impressive 8-0 leader. Now, you have the option with the Russians prior to I think it's like October 1942, something like that, to swap units for commissar. So we're going to do that swap. So this 8-0 commissar, this 8-0 leader can be swapped for, let's put him up there, take him out from here, a commissar. A commissar is just like another leader. The only difference is that when Russians are stacked with a commissar, their morale is 1 higher. So if you stack with these 447s, they have 8 morale, which actually is quite impressive. Also, if the commissar is trying to rally units, DM doesn't count for that rally attempt. And in addition to that, but on the negative side, in addition to that, their morale is still 1 higher. So you're trying to rally troops that won't be DM. I don't know if you just imagine this 447 is broken. But when the commissar is with him, you don't count the +4 for them being desperation morale, and his morale is an 8. So it's very, very much more likely that you're going to bring units back when they are stacked with a commissar. The downside of that is that if they don't rally, he shoots a couple. So you basically suffer ELR failure if he fails to rally them. Got a medium machine gun, very, very heavy. I'm not talking much about the PP, but the 5 PP makes this a very, very expensive weapon in terms of movement factors to carry. So it's going to be useful perhaps in the first prep fire phase or two. Probably difficult to get it into the battle once you've pushed the Germans over the hill. The light machine gun, on the other hand, only has 1 PP, and so I haven't discussed the mechanisms of carrying things, but that's very easy to carry. So that's going to be able to go right up into the sort of close assault right at the end of the game. We've got a mortar which fires between 3 and 20 hexes, so it can't fire at things just 1 or 2 hexes away. But from 3 all the way up to 20, this weapon can fire at hexes that it can see. Okay, so now let's see if we can set these up. I'm going to do the human wave first. So the human wave rules, I did think that it might be silly to include human wave rules in a relatively kind of introductory kind of scenario, but the thing is, ASL's not meant to be simple. It's not simple. It's not a simple game, and I thought it'd be much more interesting to have something like this happening. That's actually going to, be kind of quite exciting, perhaps, to see how human wave plays out. Also, we're going to be introducing the Japanese in the 4th of these talks, so it made total sense because the Japanese use a version of the human wave. They use a lot of the human wave rules for their Banzai attack, and although human wave attacks on the Eastern Front are relatively uncommon in the game, Banzai attacks are common when you've got the Japanese. So it's an intrinsic part of the game. I thought, let's just play it. It'll be fun and people enjoy it. And it's not as complicated as it's not all that complicated really. So let's set them up. So the rules say that to set up for a human wave, you have to have an average of at least 2 multi-man counters per hex in a continuous chain. And I think that what that means really is you could potentially have just 1 in that hex, but you'd have to have 3 in one of the other hexes, so that on average you've got 2. And the reason that that's significant, I think, is because as these things are going to charge into the teeth of German firepower, they are going to suffer. They're not spread out. There's every time that they're fired at, there's kind of 2 units there that might break or suffer casualty reduction or whatever. So it's quite a costly way for the Russians to charge forward, and I think that's exactly what the game is modelling, is the careless throwing away of lives by just trying to literally overwhelm the much better armed enemy. But if you haven't got any bullets left, all of a sudden you don't look so good, do you? So that's where we'll put them there. Now I'm going to have to think about their axis of advance, because they're going to be able to charge maybe straight down this sort of hex spine perhaps, or they can charge forward and they can kind of go like that. We'll talk more about that when we actually deliver it, but let's say that's where our human wave is going to be. We'll put the leader there for now. Right, what else have we got? Okay, so that's going to be the first thing that happens in the game. Russians can't deploy into half squads, but in our order of battle we've been given a half squad, so I'm going to use that to fire the mortar. Like that medium machine gun, it might be useful in the first turn or so, but it might not last very long. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to create a little bit of a fire base. So I'm going to take a 447 and I'm going to give them the medium machine gun, and I think we could put them 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, actually that's a reasonable. Okay, so because this hex has 2 squads in it, we can put an extra squad in there. So we'll put an extra squad in there and this leader, and they're going to fire over here. It's in normal range for the infantry, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're actually going to be able to make an 8+1 shot, which is quite a powerful prep fire shot into this hex. And if we can get rid of that position, or even just pin it, make it much easier for these conscripts to get across. Next, most of our leaders are sort of down here, so I'm going to have a couple of squads who are going to try to advance on the south. We'll have a couple of squads trying to advance in the north, and they're going to go with the commissar. And where are we going to put this guy? I mean, let's just put them all there. Okay, now let's give the light machine gun to one of those, as that might be useful when we get into sort of close combat with the enemy. So we're set up. We're basically ready to go. So before we start, I want to talk about how you hit things with guns. So this infantry gun here, we'll quickly do a couple of examples of how it hits things and how it then resolves attacks. The two mortars, the German mortar and the Russian mortar, also use a very similar system. Technically, those small mortars are support weapons rather than ordnance, but they fire by exactly the same rules, although mortars have slightly different rules to the guns. But I'll go through both very quickly for you. I think we'll start with the infantry gun. So what we need to do is to pull up the charts, and here they are. So remember last time we were looking mostly at the IFT chart and perhaps sometimes the close combat chart. Well, today we're going to be looking mostly at the ordnance to hit table. Okay. Now the ordnance to hit table tells you how likely you are to hit something depending on what you're firing at. If you're firing at a vehicle from 0 to 6 hex range, the basic to hit number is 10. If you're firing at infantry, it's 8, so it's harder to hit infantry than it is to hit a vehicle. If it's over 7 hex, if it's 7 hexes up to 12, then infantry would be a 7 to hit. Some nationalities have red to hit numbers. The Russians have red to hit numbers. So you can see here that the Russian guns are less effective than German guns beyond 6 hex range typically. Okay, this one at the bottom only applies to mortars. This is the area target type. Actually, it doesn't only apply to mortars. You can fire all guns area target type. But if you're firing area target type, this is the line that you're looking for there, to hit number. Now, a to hit number is the number you need to roll less than in order to hit something. So we're going to do a little example of this. This gun here. Obviously, this is just an example. The game hasn't started yet. I'm going to try and, if I try to hit this group here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 5 hex range, which is obviously between 1 and 6. And it's infantry target, so I need to roll an 8 or less in order to hit them. I can get a to hit roll, and I've rolled a 7, which would mean that in that instance I would have hit them. Now, if I pull this in, this might be just a little bit more if helpful. Okay. Now there are potential modifiers to that to hit. In this instance there wouldn't be, but things like hindrances would certainly get in. Would affect that to hit number. The type of gun that you've got, there's nothing special about this, but it's a starred gun. So starred guns, if you look just below the to hit table, starred guns above 12 hexes, so 13 to 18 and above, you have to take 1 off the to hit numbers, so they become more inaccurate the further away that they are. The long range weapons, the L and the double L weapons, they become more accurate the further they are away, which is well these numbers actually, they're not becoming more accurate. What it's doing is compensating for the fact that the gun is the to hit numbers are going down. With the L and the LL weapons, they go down much more slowly. So anyway, we've got a hit. So the next thing that we do is we have to calculate the effect of it. Now, this is a 75mm gun, and if you look at the IFT table, it has the this is the normal line for the firepower, but above that it has millimetre. Now this is the gun, this is for ordnance. So a 75mm gun, we look at the column that's the, you know, looking for the number that's at least as high as the gun. You can't round up to 80, round down to 70. So basically now I've got a hit, I can roll on this, on the IFT table, 2 dice on this table in just the normal way. So if I was to roll, for example, a 7, that would cause a 1 morale check on those units. Now, what kinds of things modify these to hits? I've talked about hindrances, but the other thing is TEM. So if I want to hit these units here in open ground, it is an 8 to hit, because there's no modifiers, there's no TEM, there's no hindrances. If I want to hit these guys, actually they're in a wood, that is a +1 TEM. So actually this unit would hit these guys on a 6 or better, 7 +1 to the dice roll, +1 modifier. So we would say 7 +1. If the colour dice roll on that to hit was less than or equal to a 2, then they get to after you've resolved the attack, the gun can try to fire again. So hopefully, I don't think that was a great explanation, but hopefully by the time we've done a few examples, you'll be beginning to get the idea. The mortars are different. Okay, so the mortars, they hit on a 7. As you can see, as it gets further away, it appears to go up to an 8. They appear to become more accurate, but because all of those little mortars are starred guns, it also goes down 1. So in actual fact, these go back down to a 7. So it's pretty much always, with a small mortar, it's nearly always a 7 to hit. Somebody might go, well, what about all the way over here? What about when it goes to, above 25, goes to a 7 -1? It's only a 6 to hit there. But these mortars, these small mortars, perhaps the exception of the American ones, I think might have a longer range. Most of them have a range that's less than 25. So in actual fact, this mortar, it's always going to be a basic 7 to hit. The interesting thing with mortars is that you don't apply the TEM. In fact, any area target type attack, you don't apply the TEM to hit. But when you've established a hit, it's carried out at half the normal strength, and you apply TM at that point. Okay, so area target type can be much less effective, but there are times when it's very effective. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to play through this, and hopefully there'll be lots of examples of this going on, and you'll be able to see exactly how it works. So the first thing we do, so beginning of the Russian turn, is we are going to roll for the wind, and we've rolled a 5, so there's no effects only on double 1 or double 6 that there is a change in the vast majority of scenarios. And we move to the prep fire phase. So first thing we're going to do is fire the mortar. Now the mortar is going to fire at this guy in the trench. That trench is supposed to be over them. Now assume that I hadn't forgotten to do that. So we're going to fire at the trench with a mortar. Now we worked out before that they fire area target type. They're always going to be firing. It's always going to be a 7 to hit with a mortar like this. So here's the to hit. So we've missed. However, and if you look at the coloured dice roll, it means we haven't kept rate of fire. Now, that's a shame. I was hoping for a few examples of this, but we have got acquisition, which means that if we want to fire at that hex again, perhaps in another turn, we take 1 off our to hit dice roll. I'll just call that mortar. We also want to take a prep fire shot here, but these guys are not in that, are they? So I'll just put them at the top. But the 447, the medium machine gun, the 8-1 are. Now we want to fire at this unit because we see this unit as a real threat. It's within normal range for the machine gun and for the infantry, so it's going to be an 8 +2 for the building, -1 for the leader. So it's an 8 +1 on the IFT. So we rolled a 9 where we have to add our 1, so it's a 10, and on the IFT a 10 on the 8 is nothing. So that was ineffective. We haven't kept rate of fire, and that's the end of that. That's the end of the Russian prep fire phase. I've got to say, when I played this through, the prep fire was much more effective than that. But there we go. That's why we play this game, because it's absolutely crazy. So I'm just going to explain briefly, because at the beginning movement phase we're going to do a human wave. I need to explain the mechanics of that a little bit. I'm going to spin this round and explain. You'll understand what this is for in a moment. Basically, when you move units in ASL, you move them one at a time, or you can move them in a stack. A human wave, all of these units will move together, not the ones that are prep fired, but all of the ones that are human wave units are going to move together as almost like a stack, but it's a multi-hex stack, okay, in a series of impulses. So for example, let's say they all move forward like this. Remember, I'm not actually doing this, I'm just sort of illustrating, okay. That might, they all move 1 hex forward, and that's 1 impulse. This guy has spent 2 movement points to move into this hex, so the whole line has spent 2 movement points. At that point, the Germans can announce if they want to fire at these guys, they can fire at them as much as they want. And then it'll be the second impulse, and they will move forward again like this. Okay. Now there are rules, and I think I'm going to demonstrate those as we're going through for how they move, because the player does have some control over how they move. So the first thing that the Russian player has got to do when he's announcing a human wave, he needs to say who's going to be in that wave. So we know that these stacks are all going to be in this human wave. Obviously not the guys that have been prep fired. Now, the second thing we've got to decide is we need to choose 1 Russian unit and 1 German unit, and this is going to define the direction of the attack. We need to be able to say, right, that unit is attacking, that unit is charging at that unit. So for example, if you take BB4, you could say that the units in BB4 are heading towards the units in Y6. You could decide that, but you could decide something else as well. So for example, you could decide that the units in BB4 are going to use an alternate hex grain to attack these units up here. And essentially what you're doing is you're kind of defining the direction of the attack. For simplicity, I'm going to go straight down the hex spine, okay? And we are going to have the first impulse. So units can move away from that line to some extent. So for example, this guy could move to here, which is normally just following the actual direction of this attack. But this guy could decide to go to this hex. If he does, he was 1 hex away from the line of the attack, and he's now gone to 2 hexes away. So he gets a hex grain range counter, which simply means that he cannot again increase his range to the hex grain that the attack is being launched down. When he moves back in, then that comes off, but for the moment that stays on, and basically he wouldn't be in the second impulse he can't go over that way, because that would be increasing his range again. Now actually I quite like the idea of doing this, because what it does is it's spreading them out a little bit. So he's going to there, he's going to there. That's the wrong counter, isn't it? If I clone this, they're going to have to just do that. They're just going to have to take the punishment. Do you know something? Well, let me do this. So that's our first impulse. Now, actually, this one here could go around. It's going to bypass. So we've got. You can see at the top we've got a unit that's bypassing AA3, so it's only costing them 1 movement point. And we got these 2 squads here, they're bypassing this wood, so that's only costing them 1 movement point. So in fact, every element of the chain has only spent 1 movement factor. That means that the first impulse in impulse 1 has cost them 1. Now here's the real reason why conscripts are great for human waves. Their 6 morale goes up to 7. In a human wave, your morale goes up by 1. That's signified by the morale plus 1 on the human wave counter. And all units in a human wave have 8 movement factors. Normally conscripts have 3. This is a big improvement. Okay, so the Germans can start to fire at this. So what are we going to do? I think probably the units with the weapons with high rate of fire should start to attack now. The weapons with low rate of fire should probably leave it a little bit. So let's start with the medium machine gun up here. So that's going to fire at AA5. So we can attack here. We might as well use the infantry as well. So it's 9 minus 3, or 8. It'll be a final. It'll be an 8 minus 3, won't it? Because we have to round it. We have to round it down. I'll bring the old table out. Actually, I don't need that yet, do I? Here we go. So we've rolled a final 5. 8 minus 3 is a 5. A 5 on an 8 is a 2 morale check. So the units in this hex here have to take a 2 morale check. So the first one fails and ELRs, and the second one passes. Okay, so yeah, so this conscript ELRs. Now, because it's already at the bottom of the pile, it breaks. Right, so it can't ELR because it's already the lowest quality unit. It breaks and it becomes disrupted, which means it's very, very difficult to bring that unit back. But the other one survived. The Germans, did they keep rate of fire? I can't see the dice roll now. They rolled a 5 on the... So they've lost rate of fire. So there is actually some residual going into that hex. There'll be 4 residual going into that hex there. Okay, let's have a fire. Let's try the gun. So the gun is now going to fire into this hex here, and we have got 1, 2, 3. So it's 4 hexes away. So we remember that was 8 to hit. Now these guys are moving in the open, so that's -2. So it's actually a 10 to hit with this gun. So let's roll those dice to hit. I rolled a 10, but lost rate of fire. Okay, so they've got a hit, but they've lost rate of fire and won't be able to fire again at the moment. 75 is an 8 firepower attack. So we roll 2 dice on the IFT, and we have rolled a 3. So a 3 on the 8 is a K2. Now a K result is casualty reduction. There are 3 units in that hex. That result will apply to one of them. So I'm going to roll 3 dice. The first one will be for the 6+1, and the other 2 will be for the squads. The one that gets the highest roll is the one that's going to casualty reduce. So leader, first squad, second squad. So the first squad casualty reduces, so it turns into a half squad. And the result, 3 on an 8, I can't remember what K it was now. It was a K2. So everybody else has to take a 2 morale check now. So the leader, 6, 7, 8 is broken, and the full squad, 9, 10, 11 is broken and ELR'd, or disrupted, and the half squad the same. So actually, wait, he's just broken. The others are disrupted. Break and disrupted. So you can see that the Germans are making absolute mincemeat out of these charging Russians. There's going to be 4 residual in that hex. Now, however, they first fired, so they're not going to be able to fire again. But the mortar can still fire, so the mortar is going to fire at these guys over to the side of the wood. Now, we know that it's a 7 base to hit, but they're moving. They didn't move through the wood, so they're moving around the wood. So it's they're in the open, so it's a -2. So basically, they're going to hit on a 9 to hit. Hits but loses rate of fire. Now, this is when you see how bad mortars can be. So they have a 50mm sort of size, if you like. So 50, that seems to correspond to the 6 column. But with area target type, you halve it. So this 6 is going to go down to a 2. So we're actually rolling on the 2 column. So IFT on the 2 column. 9 is no effect. So that's first fired, that's finished, it's got no more shots, and it's not had an effect. It does, however, get the get this. So size, and the other gun gets a small one in that hex. So that's the. So if I label that as the 75, this is the mortar. Okay, and that's just the first impulse. Okay, so the second impulse, he's supposed to have that one on him. Right, so they're going to go forward. They can't. That's not true. There's one good order squad in there. He can go forward. They can't do anything because they're all broken. These guys, I'm just going to move this for a moment. He's moving forward like that. Clone. And he's moving forward like that. This guy here is currently in AA3. He can't move into Z2, but he can move into Z3. He keeps the range counter on him because he's not moved any closer to the in range from this line here. Okay, because he was in this hex, which is 1, 2, and he's still 1, 2 away from it. Okay. He spent 1. 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 Okay, right. So we're going to have even more fire now. Okay, so the first thing, this guy here is going to want to fire against the human waivers coming towards him. They're adjacent, so this is an 8 minus 2. So 6, 7, so it's a 5. That's a 2 morale check. So these guys take their 2 morale check. 5, 6, 7, they are pinned, but they are immune to pin because they are human waving. So that actual shot had no effect on them. They've only spent 1 movement point, so they can't fire again. However, they do put 4 residual down there. This guy, okay. So what's the best way of doing this? My word. Okay, so let's do this guy here. Okay, so he's got to fire at something to defend himself. So he's going to fire at the guys in Z6. 4 minus 2. 9 goes down to a 7. 7 on the 2 is no effect. That's right, no effect. So he didn't have an effect either. He leaves 2 residual there. Can't fire again because everything's only spent 1 movement point. He can't fire again because he's only a half squad and he's fired his support weapon. The gun didn't keep rate of fire, although it can potentially intensive fire. So maybe it should do that. The problem is if we break the gun, because when you intensively, so a gun like that can fire a second time, It's called intensive fire, and when it fires the second time, we add 2, so we subtract 2 from its breakdown number. So instead of malfunctioning on a 12, it will malfunction on a 10. And that's kind of quite risky, really. We kind of want to keep that weapon in the game a little bit longer if we can. So we won't take that shot. We might do if these human waivers get closer to the gun. We might do it in sort of desperation. The guys up here, they can subsequent fire. So I think we will. We'll fire at the guys in Z5 as a subsequent shot. Now we have to fire at something that is the nearest unit to us. 1, 2, 3. All of these human waivers are 3 hexes away, so we can choose which one we fire at. So we'll fire at this one here. As I'm firing subsequently, it's halved, so it's going to be a 4 minus 3, and we are adding or subtracting 2 from the breakdown number for that medium machine gun. So actually a 10, 11 or 12 will malfunction the medium machine gun. So it's a 4 minus 3. Well, that's a very good shot. We don't get rate of fire because it's a subsequent fire shot. 4, 5 minus 3 is 2. So 2 on a 4 is a K2. So the unit that's in there, casualty reduces, so he goes to a half squad. He then takes a 2 morale check, which he ELR fails, so he breaks and is disrupted. So you see this human wave is absolutely shattered, but it's not completely destroyed, and they're going to get into close combat with some of these Germans. So the next so there'll be some residual in Z5, won't there? There'll be 2 in there. Okay, right, so the next impulse. Okay, so what I really want to do with this guy in X3 is move him to Y3 because he'll get the protection of the shell holes, but he can't because that would be increasing his range from the line of the axis of our advance. So this guy is going to go into Y4 for 2 because he has to cross the hedge. So the whole impulse is going to cost 2. This guy here is going to move into here. So he's moved adjacent to that guy. They're disrupted. They're not. Right, now they can move forward into close combat like that. And he's going to do the same thing. Now, why this is potentially very, very impactful is that these units now, these forward units that are designed to stop the Russians from advancing far on turn 1 are being overwhelmed, aren't they? They're being overrun. They're not going to be able to fire out of these close combat hexes if subsequent moves by the Russians potentially will be able to be unhindered. You see these guys here, they don't have to worry about this guy in here. Once they're in close combat, they can't fire out of it. So what this human wave is achieving, although there's terrible casualties from it, is it's creating the opportunity which might allow the first line Russians to act a bit more kind of effectively. So let's there's going to be some fire though. So in here we can final fire these guys. Now they're firing in hex, which means that their firepower is trebled. So this is a 12, but it's halved because they are subsequent first firing. So in actual fact, it's a 6. It's a 6 firepower shot against the guys entering the hex. They do benefit from the +2 TM because they're now in the building. So it's going to be a 6 + 2, but because they're non-assault moving, it's a -1. So it's going to be a 6 + 1 in that hex. So I've rolled a 7, 8. An 8 on a 6, I believe, is nothing. 8 on a 6 is a pintas check, that's right, but they're immune to a pintas check. So that unit is now final fired. In any case, you could walk right past that hex, he can't fire out of it. Literally, these guys here could walk through Z8 and Y9. His fire is restricted to things that are in his hex now. Similar thing may happen here, right? He can subsequent as well. Flip that over. It's actually going to be a 2+1. Alexa, stop. Sorry about that. So he's rolled a 4, add 1 of 5. There's an effect of that. So that's actually a normal morale check. The Russians absolutely fail that. So they break and they are going to be disrupted, which means they're going to surrender, which is interesting because we get to have a look at those rules as well. Now the guy in there, I think his firepower is still restricted to the hex that he is in because there are Russian units in that hex with him, even though those guys are actually broken. We're also going to have some defensive fire from... Oh, sniper. Sorry. The Russians rolled the... No, the Germans rolled their own sniper number. No, in case there's no sniper. Right, so I guess the guys here need to fire, don't they? Because they need to protect themselves. And you can see that the Germans have got a dilemma because they know these guys are going to come down this way. They're there partly to stop it. But if they don't fire at these guys, they're going to get locked into close combat in the same way that these guys have been. So they need to fire. There's no point in not firing. They're going to fire adjacent. We've got 7 in here. That's doubled to 14, rounded down to 12 minus 2. 12 minus 2. Wow. So they've rolled effectively a 2 on a 12, which is obviously going to be a KIA of some sort. On the 12, it's a 1 KIA. There's only 1 unit there, and it is now no longer there. It's gone. And we've got 6 firepower of 6 residual in that hex. Okay. Now, that final fired last time. The gun hasn't. The mortar is effectively final fired. Okay. So we are ready for the next impulse. There's only 1 Russian unit remaining, and it's this one here. Now, what are we going to do with it? Now, there's 2 choices, I suppose. He could, because I think we spent we've spent 4, so we've actually still got 4 movement points. Technically, this unit could get into close combat with some of the things on top of the hill, which is quite remarkable. We could move into X5, kind of aiming for the gun. We're potentially going to get a final protective fire shot from the machine gun. We'll talk about final protective fire shots if we decide to go for it, but it's kind of risky. If he goes into X4, he could still be fired at by these guys. But if he survives it, he could potentially restrict them and stop them from subsequent first firing over here. And I think that's got to be a key thing that the Russians are trying to achieve. So he's going to go up to there. Nothing else is eligible now to move. These units are locked in close combat, some of them broken, some of them not. Everything else is dead. He gets to there. Now, if this unit here decides to final protective fire, basically all his fire options are used up. But he gets to fire again any time something moves adjacent, but the shot doubles up as a morale check. So if, for example, I was to roll a 9, this whole stack breaks. So potentially, it's kind of very, very risky, and I don't feel inclined to fire at this conscript and risk breaking perhaps my most important stack. These guys could fire at it. And it probably, it might very well make sense. They can do quite a good shot. They got TM because they're higher. That's a +1. So these guys could fire 6 halved and doubled. It would be a 6 flat against them. That doesn't seem like a terrible idea. So let's do that. We'll flip that over. 6 flat, 5 on a 6 is a 1 check. 5 and a 6 of 1 check, and they break. In fact, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So yeah, they just break. Okay, and they stop there. Now the interesting thing is, the Russians have been absolutely decimated in that charge, but actually they have completely negated the defence. You've got 2 units locked in close combat, albeit one of them, the Russian's broken. I mean, he's probably going to die in there, but he's not dead at the moment. He's going to stop any fire from coming out of there. X3 has exhausted all of its fire options. So has W5. So has the mortar. The only thing that can realistically fire again is the gun. And it's got a fixed covered arc. So it's relatively easy for the Russians to avoid it. So I've got to go to work. So I'm going to try and finish the movement phase, and then we're going to stop. These guys up here are going to double time. The Commissar gives them the 2 bonus, so they've got 8 movement points. We can go 1. Nothing can fire at them. 2, 3, 4, bypass 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so you've got guys right behind the German position. The guys in BB8 are going to do something kind of similar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry. Okay. Right. So these guys can. There's actually residual in these. Well, you can't go into these hexes anyway. So there's residual everywhere. So but they can potentially go down the side of this wood. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. This guy's going to double time. He's going to go a 1 to there. Nothing can fire at him. Now the gun could potentially turn and fire at him, but it would be quite hard for it to hit. 1, 2, 3. These guys can't fire out because their fire is limited to their own hex. 1, 2, 3. Bypass 4, 6 to there. Now this guy here can final fire. He's already fired a mortar, so he hasn't really got any other fire options, but he can final fire. So he's going to fire 2 minus 2 at that attack there. So it's a 5 on the 2, which is a normal morale check. The 6, 7, it actually pins the Russians, which is not a great result, and leaves one residual in that hex. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one's going to double time. He's going to go 1. Actually, no. The one with the machine gun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he's CX. This one, it might be worth getting into close combat and just guaranteeing that sort of that victory. So he's going to go 1, 2 to there, and they're going to try and take out that squad. Okay, that's the end of the movement phase. We've got defensive fire coming up next. Okay, so let's complete the rest or the remainder of the Russian turn. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to advance to the advancing phase. We need to get rid of any defensive fire counters and residual counters. That tidies things up just a little bit. Also, well, let's leave the human wave counters on to the end of the advancing fire phase. Right, let's. Actually, I think we can actually probably safely remove them now, can't we? Okay, I was just not 100% sure there. Okay, let's get rid of all these human wave counters. The human wave is clearly over. I can't. Yeah. Okay, so technically, as red counters, I think they possibly come off at the end of the turn. Not sure. Okay. Right, so we got advancing fire. So the first thing that we want to look for really is shots. There's not that many possibilities. There's maybe we could take a shot from over here, from U to X3. It's a little bit unclear if there's a line of sight there, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So that's something we're going to be. Well, let's look at it now. Let's look at it now. So the issue is that when we get rid of all the counters, from X3 to U3 might very well be blocked by the building in V3, but but it's extraordinarily difficult to tell. It looks like it's right on the line. It might be that there's a line of sight there. It might be that there isn't. So what are we, as the Russians? What am I thinking here? If I've got a really good shot, I'm tempted to take it because obviously it's about 50-50 with the line of sight. So if this is a really good shot, it's kind of worth taking the risk. But if it's a poor, low odds attack, then I'm probably not going to take it because there's a danger that the line of sight is blocked and I activate a sniper. So actually this would be a 8 half for advancing fire, a 4 plus 1 for CX, another 2 for building, 4 plus 3. It's not a brilliant shot. So in actual fact the Russians are going to pass on that one. Okay, they're going to pass on that one. We're not going to do it. Over here though we have a much more interesting series of options. Normally when you see units or infantry from opposite sides, right, in the same hex, it's normally that they're in melee. That's a normal situation. But these human waves allow situations where we're actually, in the same hex, in the advancing fire phase, and we're not in melee. It's still close combat. Remember, you only go into melee if units from both sides survive a close combat phase. They then go into melee. Some very interesting differences between being in close combat and being in melee. One is that you can route out of close combat, so later on there's a possibility, we'll talk about the routes later. There are two more. One of them is that when you fire into a melee, you affect all units, friendly and unfriendly units. When you're in close combat, you only fire at enemy units. So in fact, we can fire into this close combat from units that are outside it without any danger to our own conscript there. Even more interesting, in the advancing fire phase, units in close combat can fire in their hex. If we're in melee, you can't fire in any fire phase. You leave your combat to the close combat phase in melee, but in close combat you can fire in any phase. So this 426 can certainly advancing fire at the guys, and they're obviously going to do that, but they could also fire group with all of these other guys around them, which I think is absolutely fascinating. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to do a little bit of maths, add this up. So this guy here is going to contribute 6. He's trebled for triple point blank range because he's in the same hex with his half for advancing fire. So this conscript here adds 6. This guy adds a further 4, so we could have 10 from this. Okay. The guy over here is halved again, and then doubled for point blank, so he contributes another 2, but also adds the +1 for being CX. But very interestingly, also will make this shot a shot that encircles the guys in there. So he can contribute another 2, so that would make it a 12, wouldn't it? 12 up 3. Over here we could have another 6, but the machine gun isn't going to increase the value of the attack. It's only going to add 2, so I'm just going to fire with the squad, so we're not risking a high dice roll malfunctioning the light machine gun. That takes us to 16. 16 plus 3. Okay, let's go for it. IFT 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I didn't roll it so you could see it, did I? So I rolled a 6 on the coloured dice roll and 1 on the other. So 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 on a 16 is a normal morale check. So morale check, 5, 6, they actually pass it. Okay, so that's the end of the advancing fire phase. We get rid of prep fire counters, get rid of the move counters, and we are into the route phase. So the phasing player goes first, and we are going to start with the counters in here. Now, if I remember correctly, actually the 6+1 leader is not disrupted. I haven't marked that very well, but that's a little bit clearer here. Okay, now disrupted, there's all sorts of problems. Right, disrupted counters at the have to deal with disrupted cannons at the beginning of the movement phase. So let's start with this one here. So he has to surrender immediately. Okay, has to surrender immediately because he is in the same hex as a known enemy unit and he is disrupted. Okay, now the Germans have the option of taking that surrender, in which case this one adjacent here will also surrender. So we'll end up with actually quite a large sort of number of of prisoners there. I forgot to put the encircled counter onto the German unit there. So that's interesting. But if they take the prisoners, then they will also get this half squad. So we'll end up with 1.5 squads as prisoners. If they decide not to take the surrender and just declare no quarter, they'll kill these guys as they surrender, this full squad, and these guys will rout away instead, because obviously no one wants to surrender to people who are trying to kill you. So because this is such a poor unit for morale, disrupted, broken half squad conscripts, Germans are going to take the gamble that they're not coming back into the game anyway, so they are going to declare no quarter and they are going to kill, massacre, whatever you want, those units. It's only a game of cardboard and electrons. I still always feel a little bit guilty when I do that. Okay, so that one's dealt with. Now this guy, he's going to be able to rout away now because he's declared no quarter. But we can do these ones first. They're going to go back, so they have to go to the nearest wood or building, which is either that one or that one. However, they cannot move closer to a known enemy unit. This hex is moving closer to the German units in Y8, so they have to go this way. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they move back to there. They are still DM and they are still disrupted. These guys are going to do exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just worth saying, normally disrupted units do not rout, they stay where they are, but if they're in open ground, in line of sight, with known enemy units and within normal range, they have to rout. So they're going to rout back to there. Move him up a little bit again so we can be absolutely clear that he's not disrupted, so he can attempt to self-rally potentially. Right, these guys, they have to rout because they're adjacent to a known enemy unit. They would normally surrender to them, but they're not going to surrender because reasons. So we can either, I mean, I think it's got to be a low crawl, hasn't it? Low crawl back to there, and then next time, you know, if they've not been fired at, they've got a chance of getting a bit further. All right. This unit here, this unit is in trouble because wherever he routs, he has to rout because he's broken adjacent to known enemy units. Wherever he goes, he's adjacent to known enemy units, so he's going to die instead. He would surrender if the Germans hadn't declared no quarter. Okay, so we can get rid of the move tag again, and we can move on to the advance phase. Now I think some very interesting options here. I think the first thing is we need to get this guy into here because we need to try to make sure of killing these Germans here. Very, very seriously considering moving the 8-1 back to there because we might be able to rally some of these guys. That seems to make sense. These guys obviously can't move. These guys can't move up to W8. I'd like them to, but they can't. They can't because they are already CX. It's 4 movement points to get up to there, and if you are using 4 movement points to advance in the advance phase, you have to go CX, and if you're already CX, then you can't. So they can't get up there. So the only place I could move them to is here, which is probably where I'll move them. The only thing is leaving them here gives them the ability to fire into that hex. Yeah. and for that reason I think I might just leave them where they are. I mean, I could even move them into close combat here, but they're CX, so it makes them more vulnerable, so we're probably best, I think we're just going to leave them there actually. Yeah, in X8 so they can fire at the foxhole next turn. These guys are really interesting. So these two squads with the commissar, I think that the obvious thing is to move them to here. I mean, you could consider spreading them out, one into V3. The thing is, I think we've got to move them to here because we need to be able to put some fire onto hex V5 to try and stop the Germans from sneaking down out of this trench into V5 and then into U6. We could do that with one squad, but it wouldn't be a great shot. It would be a 4 plus 1 for height advantage plus 1 for CX. A 4 plus 2 wouldn't be good. At least this is an 8 plus 2. It's a little bit more likely that we can have an impact if any guys try to move into this hex. It's kind of a likely hex, if you like, for the Germans to try to use. And that is that finished. So we're not thinking to move this forward. We're not thinking of moving that. We got the close combat there. Okay, so let's move to the close combat phase. First, we have to roll for ambush. Now, normally you wouldn't roll for ambush because the conscripts moved into that during the movement phase. It's only when you advance into a building or a wood that you do ambush, but actually a unit did advance in. So let's do some ambush rolls then. So the Russians have a +1 to their ambush roll, which is a single dice, don't I? So they rolled 3, 4 because they're conscripts. Excuse me, the Germans rolled a 6, so there is no ambush. If the Russians hadn't been conscript, there would have been an ambush there. And the Russians are attacking at 2 to 1. If you remember on the close combat table, I've just lost the charts. It's a little bit difficult managing the charts with here it is, it's back. Okay, I'm just going to pause this for a moment. Okay, are we recording? We are indeed recording. Okay, right. So, looking at the close combat phase, so the the Russians attacking, they have a kill number of 7. And the Germans need to announce what they're going to do. So they're going to attack one squad. They're going to attack the non-conscript squad at 1 to 1. So they have a kill number of 5. So it's simultaneous, but the Russians go first. They do not kill the Germans, and the Germans attack back. They half squad. Because they equal their kill number, they casualty reduce them. So that squad becomes a half squad. Well, that was not the result I think that the Russians were hoping for. Okay, we are now at the end of the close combat phase. There is no concealment growth for the Russians. So we flip this and we move to the rally phase for German turn 1. Okay, German turn 1 then. So first we've got to roll for wind, and we have got gusts. Now that is likely to be not very impactful. If there was smoke, it would be very impactful. I suppose that it's very, very unimportant perhaps in this particular situation. If there were blazes and things like that, you could have fire spreading. It is now the German turn to do rallies. So they have actually got no broken units. So it is the Russian turn to do rallies, and the Russians have quite a few. So because it's the German turn, the Russians can only rally units that are stacked with a leader or that have self-rally capability. Over here, all of these units that are trying to rally, they're going to be rallied by the -1 leader. They've also got -1 for being in rally terrain, which is the wooden building there. But we've got to add 4 to the dice roll. So essentially, overall, we're adding 2 to the dice. Sorry, yes, we're adding 2 to the dice roll. So I think we're very unlikely to get anything. I'm going to go from top to bottom here. So I'm going to roll the dice 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I will just calculate and check. So you've got the 3 there for the leader. He's a 6. I've rolled 3, 4, 5. So actually that leader came back. Because he's actually... Yep. Let me just check this. So he rolled a 3. I've got to add 4 to the dice roll. That's 7, but subtract 2. So yes, he is back. The others were 4s, weren't they? So they're not going to come back, because even the best here, if you add 2 to a 4, it's above 6. So that's that. But they are no longer DM. They are, however, still disrupted. I can just leave 1 counter on there, can't I? These guys over here stay as they are. Pins come off, and it is the German prep fire phase. Excuse me. Right, so a couple of interesting thoughts. The first is that this half squad could try to get back to the building here, but he's doing quite a good job of protecting the flank of this this gun. He's likely to come under quite a lot of pressure, which if he wasn't there, the gun would come under. So I think we're probably going to leave him where he is. And the other thing is that he has to come out into the open if he leaves that foxhole. He'll have to spend 1 movement point in the same hex to come above the foxhole, at which point he's in open ground and could be fired at from this mortar, probably not from the machine gun. All of these guys down here would be able to fire at him, and actually all of the guys there would be able to fire at him as well. They've all got line of sight. So we're pretty sure we're going to leave him where he is. So let's put a prep fire marker on him. A number of possible targets. He's obviously got acquisition here, but that doesn't do him any good because there's no units there to fire at. He could well, excuse me, he could well fire at this medium machine gun, and that would probably make some sense. So do you know what? That's what he's going to do. He's going to fire at the medium machine gun. We know it's a 7 to hit. We worked that out before. That's the base. There are no modifiers here. You don't get TEM for the to hit. So here we go. So it's a hit and it is rate of fire. This is going to be a 2 minus 1. So he's rolled a 6, which goes down to a 5. Oh, I'm having real trouble managing this this at the moment. Okay. Okay. I can't remember what I rolled. Okay. Amazing. Oh yes, I rolled 7, didn't I? But subtract 1, so it's a 6 on a 2, which is a pintask check. And they pass it, but it's the Axis sniper. So we just do sniper activation, no effect. Right, now this is going to hit on an 8. So to hit, it's a hit, but it's the allied sniper. So we'll resolve it. 2 minus 1. Rate of fire, of course. Let's just flip that. And he's rolled a 5 on a 2, which is a normal morale check. So let's take the morale check. 6, 7. Now the guys in there have 7 morale, so they are pinned. Russian sniper. Sniper is a 1. Okay, so where is the Russian sniper? Oh, this is disastrous. I feel such an idiot. I've forgotten to put snipers out, haven't I? Right. I'm going to put them out. Now, obviously, I'm just going to put them sort of like randomly in the middle of the field somewhere where it might have gone at the beginning of the game. Is the German sniper presumably is not out either? Yeah. So this is bad on my part. The world will know what a terrible sloppy ASL player I am. We'll just change the size of that one. So presumably he would have put it over here somewhere, because where all the Russians were, we'd put them out at the beginning. Okay, so there's the Russian sniper. So direction is the red one, and then distance. So 1, it goes that way. 1, 2, it goes to there. Now a 1 breaks a unit, kills a leader. so it's going to go to here because that's the nearest one. So that unit breaks. I think that's quite an important event for the Russians actually. This gun still has rate of fire, so it's going to fire again to hit and rate. 4, 5, that's a normal morale check. 6, they pass it. They get rate of fire. They're going to fire again. This time it's a hit without rate of fire. 5, 4, so a 4 on a 2 is a 1 morale check. Surely this will break them. 5, 6, 7, 8, it does. Okay, so the pin comes off, but the heavy machine gun is broken. Interesting, if the leader had been there, he'd have had to take all those morale checks as well, which might have made the whole stack more vulnerable. But at the same time, had that -1 leader been there and in good order, they would just been pinned then, because his -1 modifier would have really helped them. Well, that kept firing for a lot longer than I expected. Okay, now we've got the gun. So what is the gun going to fire at? Let's say this gun decides it's going to fire at the mortar over there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hex range. They're at the same height. There are no obstacles. There's no hindrances. So if we have a quick look, we can see what this is. So frustratingly awkward. It's completely my fault, really. I think I'm going to have. It's here. Okay, right. Basically, the to hit ordnance to hit. So as it's 8 hexes away, we're firing at infantry 0 to 6, 7 to 6. So it's a 7 to hit. Of course, we'll also remember that we have a 2 rate of fire number there. So to hit, it's a critical hit and rate of fire. Okay, so we are just looking at the what's the heat. Okay, so it's going to be doubled, and it's not a 12, it's a 24. So 24 IFT, we've rolled an 8. Obviously guns don't cower. 8 on 24 is a 2 morale check. Morale check 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's actually only pinned it, so kind of got away lightly with that, really. But now this is now not going to hit on a 7, it's going to hit on an 8 to hit. Hit and rate of fire, however, that is the allied sniper number. So we resolve the attack on a 12 column this time because it's not a critical hit. 5 on a 12 is still like a 2 check, I think. 2 check. Okay, so they're ELR broken. So if I heat a battle, ELR, they go down to conscripts and they break, and then the sniper activation is a 4, which is nothing. It's kept rate of fire. Should we turn the gun? The thing is, there's likely to be guys from here running around, so I think we're just going to keep basically just not fire. What could we fire? We could potentially fire at this hex. Already broken. I think I don't want to turn to fire backwards because these guys are sorting out behind us. I don't want to turn to fire at these because they might be past us quite quickly. And there is a possibility that these guys are going to be rushing forward next turn. So they're not going to fire anymore, but they have fired, so they're prep fired. Okay. Right, unit here is going to try to move. The unit here is probably going to try to move. So that's the end of our prep fire phase, the movement phase. Okay. So remember, there was a real problem moving this guy out of here. That applies less with the guys in the trench. They can slide out, as I explained earlier. So that is what they are going to attempt to do. They're going to assault move. It's only going to cost them 1 down to that position. Okay, so that's their move. Now the Russians can fire at them, but there is no particular rush because they can wait until the final fire phase. They're not going any further, are they? This unit here is going to assault move. Wherever he goes, he's going to get attacked, isn't he? Do you know what? I think it might make sense to leave him where he is, which means I should have prep fired him, but we all make mistakes, because he's going to make it more difficult for any of these units that are approaching. So that's the end of the German movement phase. Next phase is defensive final fire. Really negated the Russian fire here. It's really been become irrelevant really. But we do have a shot from over here, so we'll try that. This is going to be an 8 up 2 into there, and they've rolled 10, which goes to 12. It's no effect. That's going to be very important, because these guys are now going to be able to get into this victory condition building. We might have some decent shots here. So we've got 6 from there, and we've got 8 from there. 8 and 6 is 14, so we won't fire the machine gun, so it's a 12 plus 3 into there. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on a 12 is a pin task check. 5, 6, 7, and they are not pinned, they passed it. Okay, I think that was definitely a turn that went in favour of the Germans really, although that it would have been even more disastrous for them if that squad over there hadn't been broken. So that's it for defensive final fire. We now move to advancing fire, so we can get rid of all defensive fire counters. And residual, although I'm not sure that there is any out there at the moment. So these guys can now advancing fire. So they're obviously going to fire back at these guys over here. They've got they can't use the machine gun because the machine gun has moved. Okay, but they can have a 2 plus 2 for the wall, minus 1 for leader. So it's a 2 plus 1 shot. Doesn't count as the leader, so it's a 7. 7 on the 2 is no effect. That is probably the only. I suppose we might as well take an advancing fire shot from here. And I think the best thing would be simply to fire up the hill, but it's an 8 up 1. Sorry, that's a 2 up. It's a 1 up 1. Joe, I think that's, you might call that sort of sniper bait. So I think the Germans won't take that shot. They should have prep fired and might have had an effect. And that brings us to the route phase. The Germans do their routes first. Right, the guys in X3 can, let's get rid of the prep fire counters, in X3 can stay where they are, but they can route if they want to. It might make sense to move over here to get out of the way and to find some time to rally, but the game is so short they're very unlikely to rally, so I think we'll leave them where they are. Could move them up here. It's moving towards a Russian unit, but they can't see it, so they could move up to here. I'm not sure that we're gaining a huge amount by doing that, so I think we just stay where we are. Nothing else. Okay, it is now the Russian routes, isn't it? Okay, right, the guys in there, they're going to stay where they are. Are they? Why not move? They're going to stay where they are. And these guys, they're going to move back 1. Hang on, is this going to overstack us? No, it's a half squad back into there. They're still DM. It's only the top half squad that's DM. So that's routes. That's routes done. So we're now in the advance phase. The Germans are going to advance into this building, and I think that's very significant. These guys are going to stay where they are. And now one option would be to move this guy up to X5 in order to try eventually to get perhaps into the that's come off because the guys over there broke, and obviously they're not pinned. Oh, hang on, these guys need to route. Okay, so we'll low crawl them. They have to go towards a wood, so we'll low crawl down to there. Where was I? Routes. No, advances. Okay, so the Germans have advanced into there. This is quite a nice place for making it difficult for the guys here running across, if any of them, rally. but I think we're better off trying to get up onto the hill. So we're going to get him up onto the hill here. Be interesting to go here. I mean, he'd be very, very vulnerable. But if everything things prep fire at him, then it's they're not moving and they're not making other kind of progress. But I think I quite like over there. Makes it a bit more difficult for the Russians to get onto the hill, and that's it for the Russian advances. We've got close combat. Okay, so the Russians are going to go first. They're going to attack. The Germans are going to attack the Germans will attack the 237 at 2-1. Russians are attacking everything at 3-2. So the 2-1 attack by the Germans. 5, 6, 7. I keep grabbing the wrong thing. I can't not tell you how annoying this is. Here we go. Close combat. 2-1 is a 6. They rolled, I believe they rolled a 7, so they don't get to kill them. Then you got the 3-2 back. The Russians need a 6, which they get, which casualty reduces the Germans. Here we go. Okay, good. We're still in melee, which is difficult for the Russians. Really need this squad and a half. Get everything they can get. So I didn't move that on. Okay, so we are going to do end of the close combat phase is concealment growth. None of these guys are going to be getting concealed. They can all be seen by Russian units. Okay, so next phase. It is indeed the Allied turn 2. Okay, well, so we are now playing out Russian turn 2. So the first thing we've got to do is the wind. No change. Rallies. So the Russians should look for a self-rally. And they could potentially have a self-rally here or here. Now, they're very, very unlikely to come back on a self-rally. But these guys will come back on a 3, I believe. So let's do that. It's not hugely likely, but it's a free attempt. So they do not. They do lose the DN. Hopefully they'll have a leader there to help rally them later. Right, back here we have got an 8-1. So actually these guys will come back. They've got the woods and they've got the leader, so I can subtract 2. So in fact 7, 6, 7 for the non-DM guys in that order. Nope. Nope. No. And then there's the DM guys. They're not back either. Okay, I think that's disastrous, and I think that was very unlucky for the Russians to do as badly as that. The Germans don't get to do any rallying because it's not their turn. They got no leader over there with that guy. But they, I mean, they could attempt to, deploy, but they're not going to be trying that. Okay, so prep fire. Okay. Okay, so the fire group, if you like, over here is completely out of action at the moment. So there's no prep fire over there. Could be prep fire from over here. 8 up 3 though doesn't strike me as hugely as a hugely good shot. So there's that's something to remember. Down here we perhaps have got some prep firing to do. I want to fire into this fox. I want to break that so we can advance into it and flank this gun. So let's go for that. Prep fire. Okay, this guy is going to be able to contribute 8. He's going to be able to contribute 4. So we got a 12 up 3. 5, 6, 7, 8 on a 12 is a 1 morale check, and 6, 7, 8, 9 the Germans break. Okay. So that's it for prep fire. So let's move to the movement phase. Now there's not a huge amount that can move. That's worth remembering. These guys here are almost going to become irrelevant to this game, even if they rally. We've only got one more turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. They can't even get up onto the hill. I mean, potentially they could get close enough for some sort of an advancing fire shot, which might help the game. But I think what we probably need to do is move the 8-1 leader back there. Maybe we can get some sort of benefit out of him. I don't really want him running around here. There's so much firepower directed at him. Right, so they're not moving. Most of these guys are broken in, but the leaders are not moving. This guy here, one possibility would be to move up here. Now, if we were fired at from over here, it would be an 8 flat, which is a bit dodgy. If we got into here, we'd be a little bit safer. We'd still be able to fire up there, and we'd be able to fire at these. I think that's probably the right move then. So we assault move into here. Germans don't fire. Assault move again, and assault move again. Okay, loses CX now. Okay, that's it for the movement phase. So let's go to the defensive fire phase, and we have got final fire. So this is obviously a key shot in the game. He's going to fire here, and it's going to be 8 up 2. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on an 8, I think is a pin task check. So the commissar is pinned. Wow. Okay. Which means that these guys are now pinned on a 7. Well, he's okay and he's okay. Only the commissar is pinned. Obviously the mortar's not going to fire. In fact, it has lost that. The gun. What is the gun going to fire at? So I think the gun is tempted now to turn. Okay, so we turn the gun like so, and we're firing at this hex here. It's going to be +3 for the turn, -1 for the range because it's only 2 hexes away, so it's +2. It'd be 8 to hit, +2. 7, 8, 9. So that's a miss. We will move the acquisition to here, flip that, but it was a miss and it lost rate of fire. So that's final fired. This guy's going to final fire a 2 flat into there. No effect. Okay. So I think the Russians have got a little bit of a problem actually, and the problem is that they can't re-DM this. There's a real chance that these guys are going to come back into the game because that DM's going to come off after the rout phase and it'll be the German turn, and there's a possibility that that comes back. If I just pause a moment and try and remember something. Yes, sorry. So I was just trying to. I should have removed this DM at the beginning of the turn, shouldn't I? In the rally phase, that's why I just stopped to kind of like double check that. Okay, so that's the end of final fire from the Germans. So we can now remove all defensive fire counters, and we can move to the advancing fire phase. Well, I guess we've got an advancing fire shot from here, though it's not particularly promising. It would be a 4 + 2. No, it could work. Let's roll for it. 4, 5, 6 on a 4 and a sniper. This is going to be 6 on a 4 is a normal morale check and a sniper. So we'll do the morale check for the leader and the squad. I think they're right because the leaders, they're actually the pin, though it won't matter in this instance. And then we've got sniper activation, which is a 6, there's no effect. And there are no other advancing fire shots for the Russians. We're now in the rout phase. Right, these guys have got to rout, so they can actually see the guys down there. They obviously can't rout to one of these hexes, so I mean, one possibility would be to rout this way, but that's 3 hexes to that wood. It's only 2 hexes to that wood, so I think they've got to attempt to rout to there. Yep. So because they got height advantage, they're not going to face any sort of interdiction. They're okay. Okay. So if they, yeah, they're going to have to go here. The reason they're going to there and not to here is because there are Russian units which are not CX, because they lost their CX. That was from the turn before. They lost their CX when they prep fired. I should have taken them off at that point. Moving to there, they would be interdicted. Okay, so in fact, what they're going to do is move. Actually, they can't, can they? 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes. 1, 2, 3. They have to go. Right, they have to go to here, which means they risk interdiction. I think they might surrender. Okay, so the rule is that if the only way that they can kind of get out of the situation they're in, being adjacent and broken to a known enemy unit, is to risk interdiction or to low crawl, then they surrender instead. I think these guys surrender. Yeah, they surrender. And Russians are going to do a nice little tit for tat. They're not going to accept that surrender. So that's the end of that. Okay, any other routes? Okay, he might as well route down to here. No routes for the Germans. So we're now in the advance phase. Okay, so we should have taken off the prep fire counters. Right, how are the Russians going to advance? Now we really want to move into this hex here. But this gun can follow them. And it's going to be point blank. So it's going to be a 8 minus 3. I could be in the foxhole, I suppose. 1, 2, 3 in the foxhole. Let's try and get into the foxhole. Okay, 1, 2, and then 3. So there's a little bit of protection perhaps from having the foxhole there. These guys, oh, that's, so let's say they follow that. Okay, that's so annoying. These guys will move up to here, but this will CX them. So it's really significant that the CX came off when they prep fired, because they are now able to prep to CX to get up to here. We really need to be able to take this gun quickly. I think this is why the Russians are being this is a very risky place to move into, though by moving 1, 2, and then 3 into the foxholes, they've got a degree of protection. But if the Russians aren't pushing now, they've got no chance, because we've got to take this gun out quickly, and we've got to try to attack this building from both sides. You know, the Russians really are running out of resources and time to do this. Anyway, so that's the advances. No. We also want this guy. I guess we want that more, don't we? Okay. Okay, so that's the end of the advanced phase. Close combat. The Russians are going to go for everything, so 3 to 2. Germans are just attacking the half squad, which is 1 to 1. So the Russian attack 3 to 2 is, I believe that's a casualty reduction. That'll do. 3 to 2 is a 6. Yep. So they kill the half squad. The Russians attacking back at 1 to 1 need 5, which they don't get. So finally, the Russians have won this close combat. Gives them a little bit more personnel to desperately try and capture this this position up here. Okay. No concealment growth. And we move to the rally phase of German turn 3. Sorry, not turn 3, turn 2. So this is the axis turn 2. So they have to, it's also the, hang on a sec, no. Yes it is, axis turn 2, yeah. Axis turn 2. Okay, so they have to roll for win first, and there is no effect. There are rallies, so obviously they're going to try and self-rally this guy over here. He'll come back on a 7. -1 for the building, +1 for self-rally. He's not back. I think that's very impactful. It's important, gives the Russians a chance. Definitely Russians are on a bit of a back foot at the moment. Obviously the Russians can't attempt to rally that, but they can try and rally the guys in here. 7, 8 for the wood, 9 for the leader, and the machine gun group is back. They're also, the Russians going to search for the mortar just for kicks, really. I'm not sure how useful it's going to be to them, but they can search for it. They find it. Remember, it's pretty much anything except a 6, except in the jungle. It's a bit more complex. And then we got these guys here. Now we've got a +1, so this is going to be +1 for the build, -1 for the building, +1 for the leader. So it cancels that. So basically, these guys rally if they roll their morale numbers. So we're going to go. We need 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5. The bottom one rallies, and that's the full squad as well. Okay. So we have got German turn 2. Obviously they're not pinned. Okay, right, prep fire. So this gun has got to fire, hasn't it? Now this is the juiciest target, 2.5 squads, but this is the biggest threat. So I think it has to fire into there. So it needs an 8, -2 for the range, -1 for the acquisition, +2 for the foxhole, so it's an 8 -1 to hit. 9, that's a hit, loses rate of fire, 12 flat, so they don't benefit from the TEM once they've got a hit if it's in infantry target type. And they've rolled a 12, which is going to be no effect. So I'd say that was quite a big deal. Now they've actually got 2 acquisitions here, so I can flip this. So here's an interesting thing. So the Germans actually have a really good chance of hitting this again with intensive fire. Intensive fire is +2, but they're -4 now anyway. So there's a very, very good chance of them hitting if they fire again. But it reduces the breakdown number to 10, and that would put the gun out of the game from a victory condition, as far as victory conditions are concerned. So for that reason, they're not going to fire. The guys in here probably should prep fire. I can't see where else they're going to go. If they try to kind of evade the defensive fire from this group over here, if they're thinking about moving, then they're probably just going to get fired at. They could possibly go and bypass there, but and then into here, and then advance back into here to try and avoid fire. But yeah, there's Germans on the hill. Can the Germans see that point there and be able to fire at them while they're moving in bypass? Probably can. You see, I think it's kind of very risky. I think they're better off staying in a building where they've got some decent TEM and not being too clever. And the other thing is, of course, they can move upstairs if they want to. I'm going to prep fire. 8 +2. No effect. Okay. Now it's the movement phase, because these guys are going to move, and they are going to assault move up into this trench. It will be 2 to move up into the trench because the Germans still control that trench. There they are. They're up there. Okay, that's the end of the prep fire phase and the movement phase. I'm sorry, I'm not being very good at keeping tabs on this. Next phase is defensive final fire. Now this guy actually has no targets now. The guy here has several targets. He could fire his IFE into the adjacent hex, or any other hex for that matter, or he could fire the mortar. It's going to have penalties being captured and unqualified use and stuff like this. It's probably not going to be a very, very good shot. I think the best thing they can do is take advantage of the fact that they didn't break and simply fire into that hex. It's going to be an 8 up 2. I don't know why I rolled to hit, but it's had no effect. It should be the IFE, of course, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to final fire from here at the same target, because we really want to break that the crew manning that gun now. This is going to be an 8 up 1. IF IFT. Right, it's a better shot, keeps rate of fire. 5, 6. 6 on the 8 is a 1 morale check, and they have failed it, which I think is pretty good for the Russians. We're a lot closer. The Russians are a lot closer now to fulfilling their victory conditions. Now, when they fired that machine gun, they needed to. The Russians need to say which direction it's firing in. Let me just explain this rule. I'm not sure that I've talked about this rule before, so because I can't find the counter for here we are, ordnance. Right, we'll use that. Okay. What happens if I flip it? Okay. So basically, if you fire a heavy or a medium machine gun in a woods or a building, you have to declare what its covered arc is. So let's do that. So let's say it was like this. Is that legal? Yeah. So that's the covered arc of that machine gun. As it kept rate of fire, it can now continue to fire. It could fire at this unit, which is in good order, which might be quite sensible to do. Or it could fire at this in order to kind of like DM it. But because it's the Axis turn, it's our turn next, they won't be able to try to rally that unit anyway. So let's fire up here. This is going to be a 4 up. They're in the trench, aren't they? So it's going to be a 4 up 1 because I've still got the leader there. 6, 7, 8. 8 on a 4 is nothing, but we get rate of fire, so we can fire again. Right, now this is being led by a leader, so this is a final 3. A 3 on a 4 and rate of fire is a 2 morale check. Bizarrely. Right, that's a casualty reduction. They're gone. They've still got rate of fire, so continue firing at the crew, I guess. 5, 6. 6 on a 4 is a normal morale check. They've broken. They've gone. Strictly still got rate of fire. Okay, we'll fire into there. 4 up 1 over there. Loses rate of fire and no effect. That's very, very significant because there is now only 1 hex or 1 victory condition target that the Russians still need to get. So that was very effective defensive fire, and this stack hasn't even fired yet. Okay, so advancing fire, there won't be any because every German unit has ceased to exist apart from the one in that building. And obviously they fired, so we can take off counters, prep fire, residual, defensive, routes. Actually, that should have come off in the rally phase. I don't think there are any routes to be had. Right, he was fired at, so there is a DM on him. I'm now inclined to move them, actually. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, just 4 up to there. Just because there's a sort of there's a hex that potentially Russian units might want to go through, and they're in the way. You know, those guys are in the way. They can't move all the way up onto the trench, unfortunately, for them. Okay, so that's the routes. Next phase is advances. Very, very difficult choice. Okay, right. I think the Germans are going to win this, aren't they? So, in order to capture the building, the Russians need to be able to wipe everything out in that building. Yeah, they need to be able to wipe everything out in that building. So, what the Germans are going to do is advance this leader into this hex. And that makes it, I think, impossible for the Russians to win. They fulfill this victory condition, fine. There's nothing, very little that other German units can do to influence this battle. These guys are more or less out, even if they all rally for the final Russian turn. But they can't get upstairs, can they? So even if these guys succeed in, say, moving adjacent, ready to move into close combat, in the rout phase, all these German units need to do is break and move upstairs. These Russian units will be able to get into the base of the building, but they won't be able to get into the... Do you know what? I'm totally wrong, aren't I? I'm totally wrong, because they would die in the Germans, because the Germans have got to turn after this. Okay, all right. So ignore everything that I just said. Okay, these guys are going to stay together, so they got a decent amount of firepower to try and keep these Ruskies as far away from them as possible. They don't gain concealment. There's no close combat, and actually we're in the final turn. Allied turn 3, although obviously there may very well be a German turn 3 after that. Right, Russian turn 3. I must say, a little while ago I didn't expect it to be remotely close. Okay, so this is the win for the Russian turn. The Russians have got quite a few attempts to rally. I suppose they might as well do the self-rally there, even though I can't see how he can have an impact on the game. But he doesn't rally anyway. These guys will be back on 4-5-4. 4-5-4. So this one rallies. So actually, they've got a significant number, 2 whole squads left. But even with the leader, 3, 4, 5, they can only move 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If they CX 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, they can't get anywhere near this victory condition building. They can DM these guys, which might be vaguely significant. These guys might be able to get a bit further. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, they can actually get into the battle. Okay. Prep fire. I mean, 8 up 2. I think these guys are going to have to. They're going to have to go for it, aren't they? They're going to have to assault move into here. Okay, so that was the rallies. Okay, German rallies. They do that, and we'll move to the prep fire phase. There's no prep fire. Next phase is movement. Okay, right. This guy is going to go 1 out of the foxhole. Germans hold their fire because they know what's happening. He's got to go for this building, hasn't he? He's going to go 2 into there. Germans fire. What do we do? What do? They don't want to fight everything in one direction. So they'll fire just the infantry into here. They're going to have to use the leader, because if they cower, it's going to be Russians swarming all over them. So this is going to be an 8-2. Well, actually, this could be an assault move. Oh, it's an assault move. 1. It's an assault move. No, I think they're changing. Is that changing location? 1 out, 2 out. No, I think that can be an assault move. So 1 out, 2 to there. So that's all they're going to do. They're just going to assault move to there. So if the Germans take a shot, they do get the -1 for being out in the open. I think they're still going to have to do that. So first fire, just the infantry, 4 -1. 4, 5, 6 on a 4 is a normal morale check. The Russians pass it. There is 2 residual in that hex. Next guy. This comes off. These guys go 1 to there. Oh, that's not the right way, is it? 1 to there. Actually, no, 1 to there's fine. They're not on level 1, are they? Bypass U7 for 2. Now, they're only 1 hex away. So we can fire, the Russians can fire. So they're going to fire the machine gun at this, and this is going to be a 4 minus, it's going to be an 8 minus 1. 8 minus 1. 6, 7 on 8 is a 1 check. And 5, 6, 7, 8, so they fail it. Break there. Right, so did they keep rate of fire? Do you know what? I actually did not do a very good job of remembering if they kept rate of fire. They didn't with the machine gun, no. Okay. Right, but everything is fired. And we got a unit adjacent. Russians got a unit adjacent. These guys are probably going to have to CX 1, 2, 3, 4. We've also got 2. Right, we've got 4 residual in there. This should have been an 8 minus 1. Shouldn't it? So this should be 4 in here. Now, does that change? Right, I'm going to have to go back and have a look at the thing. So, I'll put you over there. Okay. So this is the machine gun attack. This is the other attack. So 7. It was a minus 1, which is a 6. 6 on an 8 is a 1 check. So 7. They were up 6, 7. So in actual fact, they've pinned. Okay. So that's quite important, isn't it? Now they are going to have to take chances, I think, because right. So these guys are not going to get in this turn. These guys can, of course. But let's move other things first. So we got these guys here. Right, he's going to double time, and he is going to go. Hang on, what about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? No. Okay, so he's going to double time. He's going to go 1. Bypass the woods for 2, 3, 4, 5. Has to just take it. So it's a 4 flat. 4 on a 4 is a 1 morale check. They keep rolling their own sniper numbers, but he passes. Wow, that's quite significant. I don't think this guy can get in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He can only get 5 points. He's got 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess he can. Okay. Again, not a great unit, but he might as well do it. So he goes 1 to 2 to there, 3 in bypass, 4, 5 to there. Now this is a 4 minus 2. 5, 6, 7. 7 on a 4 is a pin task check, and he's all right. He doesn't, but he activates the sniper, which is only a 4. Okay. Right, these guys are going to double time, drop in the machine gun. They're going to go 1 to there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, now this is where the dilemmas start. Everything has fired. He needs to fire again. So he's going to fire again into here. It's going to be all 8 plus 1 for height advantage, minus 1 for non-assault movement, minus 1 for the leader. So it's an 8 minus 1. Not a great shot for the Russian, for the Germans. That will malfunction their machine gun because they're adding to the dice roll because it's sustained fire. They final fired, and they will leave some residual here because it was an 8, wasn't it? So there's 4 residual there. But they final fired, and there's now a significant stack next to them. They are CX, which doesn't help, but right, can any of these guys get anywhere? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not really. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's as far as they can get, isn't it? Double time with the leader. 1 to there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're getting 2 for leader, 2 for being CX. They could actually move 7, but obviously they can't go any further because all the hexes they want to move into will be more expensive. It's not having any real effect on the game. It makes it a bit more difficult for this unit to come back, perhaps, and have an effect. Sometimes, if I think moving something at the very, very end probably isn't going to make any difference, but I can't quite work it out, I might do it, move it anyway, just in case I'm overlooking something. Right, so I think this bit's really important now, okay? So this guy is going to assault move into here. They are going to have to fire, yeah? 4 minus 2. Halved and doubled. 4 minus 2. Minus 2? Yeah, 1 for the leader, 1 for the open ground. Here we go. Okay, that's going to wipe him out, okay? And they pass the essentially the morale check there. These guys are going to do the same. He's going to fire at them. 4 minus 2. Wow. 3 on a 4 is a 2 morale check. The commissar fails it. There's literally the most useless commissar in history. Did I say it was a 2 check? He's 6, 7, 8. He's broken. Okay. Literally the worst. Okay, now I just thought for a moment there that Russian victory was almost certain, but it is by no means almost certain. Okay, so that's it. Movement phase is complete. Defensive fire. There won't be any because they took that shot. That last shot didn't break. It was remember that last shot against those was a morale check. Almost certain the Russians would have lost if they had failed it. Advancing fire. Right, there'd be another way of finishing this game would be to break them with advancing fire. I'm not sure how likely that is. So these guys could contribute 4 to an attack. These guys could contribute 4 and 2. That's 6. These guys could contribute 2. So you potentially got 6, 7, 8. I tell you, potentially got 12. 12 altogether. It's plus 1. Another plus 2. 12 plus 3. No effects. No machine guns were fired. Okay. That's advancing fire complete. Okay, route phase. So he can move to there. They can move to there. They're not really doing anything. Now, some issues here. Would it work for the Germans to route a unit upstairs? No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. Okay, because there's another phase, another turn after this. Okay, so we might as well keep them together. So, advances. Okay. Right, this guy's got to move in, hasn't he? With his well, there's more coming, so there's going to be plenty of CX-ness. 1, 2, and we've got the half squad here, all into there, and they're all CX. Okay, and take these CXs off. Oh, he should have routed. Okay, so round back to there, I guess. So we are in close combat. It is not the last close combat phase, but I think we'll know very soon who's won. There is a chance of ambush. Right, the Russian number is +1 for CX, -1 for leaders. So this is the number. This is the roll for the Russians. They've rolled a final 2. The Germans can subtract 1 from their dice roll, so there is no ambush. Okay, so how are they going to do this? Obviously, so the Russians have to declare who they are stacking the 8-1 with. So let's say he's going to stack with the 4-4-7, I guess. Germans, obviously, they're stacking their leader with their 4-6-7 because there's nobody else they can do. Russians go for everything. think so. Germans are going to go for the 4-4-7 with the 8-1. I think that would make sense. Okay, right. Russians have got 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 against 5. 5, 6, 7.5. So they get 3-2. 3-2. The Russians got 3-2. -1 for the leader, +1 for the CX. 6 on 3-2. I can't. This is actually going to be quite a close game. On 3-2 is a casualty reduction. So the Germans get a casualty reduction. Is it the right? Do you know what? I'm going to have to pause this and just go back to see whether, in fact, the Russians have already won. I'm not sure. All right, I'm back. Okay. So, in actual fact, everything that we just did, we shouldn't have done. Essentially, the last turn, the Russians had a 2-1. I thought it was 3-2, which meant 7 was the to kill number. They had a -1 for the leader and +1 for the CX. They rolled a 6. That actually wiped out the Germans. So, in fact, this game was won at the end of. So these guys are still exist at the end of Russian turn 3. I made some mistakes there, I know, but I hope that people nonetheless found it a useful learning experience. I think it's a really, really strange scenario. I think it's very, very dicey. For example, I think if the sniper hadn't broken that German squad in X3, I think the Germans would have won easily, and people would be going, "Oh, my, this is impossible for the Russians to win this." And I think so. I think that can be an incredibly dicey scenario because it's so small and it's so short. I've played it several times and it's gone both ways decisively. I was surprised that this was a Russian win in the end, but Russian win it was. Don't forget to subscribe. Please go ahead, hit the bell button. You'll also get told when you have Illuminating Rounds videos coming out. And don't forget we have a Patreon. If you want to support us further, you're very, very welcome to go to the ASL Scenario Archive and follow the Patreon links there if you're interested. Patrons get all 4 of these scenarios for free. You probably can get by without having the scenario card, just by putting the counters out that you can see presented in the video. If that's what you want to do, that's absolutely great. I'd be very, very happy that you get something out of it. But even if you're a Patreon for a very, very short amount of time, 1 month for example, you would be able to download the original scenario cards for free. I suppose it's not free if you're paying as a patron, but you get the idea. Anyway, thank you very much. Take care. Next one, hopefully, I'll get around to as quickly as possible. Bye bye now.